Calling the meeting to order at 6:30. We don't seem to have a terribly large number of things to get to, but we have guests, so I would love for you to introduce yourselves to anybody who doesn't know who you are.
I'm Alice Mays in Putney.
Ellen Barnes, Putney. Here because I'm hoping to see a shift on the part of the board to be a little closer to the will of the majority of Putney voters around the issue of the merger.
Okay. Well, I think that it's pretty obvious we kind of have moved in that direction, and now we're just waiting to see what happens next, which is pretty much where everybody who isn't already merged in the state is seeing what happens next. So thank you for coming. You're welcome to come anytime. If either of you are interested in serving on this school board, we have a vacancy.
Been there, done that.
Right. Check that box.
Yeah, I know, but it would be remiss of me not to ask you. So we will, I guess with that, we will move on to the clerk's report. Does anyone have, do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes of from the March 14th meeting.
Second.
Any corrections, deletions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, then the minutes are approved. And I brought up the
Thank you.
wrong window. Yes, again, Tim, they're wonderful minutes, and people are bothering to write to me to tell me that they're really good minutes, so,
Yeah, I heard that twice.
yeah. So that would come under communications. That is what I have heard, and I'm sorry, Herb, I didn't get to the mailbox. So I don't know if there's anything.
Oh, there is actually, I think, let me, I'll go down.
Okay.
I think
Sorry.
there's a couple of 1% things in here.
That would be very good. Other than that, I haven't received any communications except the ones that I have forwarded to you. Just so you know, at the end of the evening, we're gonna have a really short executive session, but it will be really short, and anybody who doesn't have to be here can go home, because there will be no action taken. So could we move on to the warrants, please? You sound good fast. Since everybody come back.
I move that we approve the Putney Central School District warrants. There's two here. First in the amount of $17,721.15. The second in the amount of $2,259.64.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion at all? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Tim, you need those to get the
I have the
numbers from?
information on already.
Oh, that's right, because the email was late. I'm from way back in the day when I used to do that, they didn't. So we have another guest, Ms. Adams, for anyone who does not know her. You're just here to observe, or? Okay, well, sometimes people come and they have something they want to talk to us about in particular. Well, we'll, of course, wait for her for the administrative report, unless Paul did. I didn't think so.
Just here.
More and more guests. Oh, would you like to introduce yourself to anyone who might not know you?
Sure. I'm Ellen Strong. I'm a parent at school.
And are you here to talk about anything in particular, or are you just here to observe things?
Mostly to observe and also as PTO rep to talk about how we can work together.
Yes. We got to your point, your part of the agenda, so if you...
I am, for my admin stuff?
Yeah,
sure. Okay.
Yeah, we banned through those warrants.
All right, well, great, okay. So, we have a new nurse, new school nurse, Nicole Boozer, her name is, and she'll be starting, July 1, when Arlene retires. We had a number of applicants, but very, very few with school experience. And that's kind of a big hurdle for people who, even though they may have professional experience in the healthcare field, it's very different working in a school environment. So I was very pleased to be able to have her among the applicants, and so we've offered her the position, and she's accepted, and she will be on board as of 7/1. Yeah. Phone system. So people who've been here know that we got a grant, 50% grant to offset the cost of coming into 911 compliance with the phone system. Essentially what it means is that in the past, if you dialed 911 from a school phone, it would say Putney Central School, period, end of story. And so the idea from the folks who run the 911 alert system was that, it would be great if schools and other places could have a finer grained approach to that. So essentially what that means in practice is that now when you pick up the phone, each of the rooms has a number. They've always had numbers. And they have a diagram of the building with the numbers on them. So they'll say, 911 call from room 22. And so any first responders would know that that's the location of the concern. So that's just about wrapped, and so we will, that's a nice thing to have done. Cost, I think the total cost was about $5,700, so we'll pick up half of that, $5,800. Tomorrow is a good day. It is going to be the pellet boiler commissioning day. For those of you who have any experience with this, you know that commissioning of any sort of energy system is an important part of the process, where you basically get the signatures and the checkoffs from the engineers and the people who've installed the thing. So there'll be a bunch of people here starting at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning to do just that. There's one piece that hasn't been finished yet, and it's not an impediment to the operation of the system. I've mentioned it before. It's the buffer tank. The buffer tank will be removed and replaced with one that has slightly larger, well, about 25% larger capacity. And what that means is that the water will get to temp and stay there longer as the system draws on the warm water, hot water to come out of the system. So you'll reduce the cycling, the firing of the boiler, because once that big tank of water is heated up, it stays going for a good long while. So that's a good thing. They'll get to that, I would think, in the next, well, outside would probably be at the end of their vacation. It's only going to take them a day to put it in. We finished a couple of calendar things. There's a ton of stuff. I mean, if you've been around schools, you know that once we hit April vacation, it's kind of like we've been climbing to the top of the roller coaster, and now it's like this to the end of the year, right? So there'll be lots of things happening. We've got a School Safety Day coming up. We've got a couple of surprise things, given the current audience, which I won't discuss in depth, coming up for the kiddos between now and the end of the year. Graduation, because of the calendar, we had initially thought it was going to be June 10th. We're bumping that up to the 17th. That'll be Monday night here, so put that on your calendars. Next week, thanks to our friendly PTO, we have a family dance planned for everybody. And that's next Friday at 6 o'clock. So that's really all I have for right now. I don't know if there's any questions or clarifications.
What's the date on the dance?
Oh, I wanted to say one other thing. It's next Friday, the 5th.
4th?
4, 5, no?
From 6 to 8. Open to all ages.
I thought it was the 5th.
It is.
Oh,
April
okay,
5th.
4, 5, okay, got it, yeah. 6 o'clock. Come one, come all.
Or earlier if you want.
You don't have to have a family, just come, just show up.
Yes, we do have some staff who
It'll
are
be-
coming, it's open, we're very excited.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I neglected to mention that we just had parent conferences, and we had actually everybody, I think, from kindergarten through 5th grade conducted those with student-led conferences. And essentially what that means is that parents come in, and depending on the age level of the kid, the grade level that the kids are in, they sit down with their parents and they say, hey, here's some of my work, this is some of my learning. And the parents, in some cases, are provided with interview questions for the kids so that they know, these are some of the important things you might want to ask about your child's learning, so forth. And they were very well attended. Audrey, and just off the top of my head, I keep track, I haven't gotten all the numbers yet, but Audrey in 5th grade had 100% of the 26 people come in there. Sarah Cassidy had 100% participation of parents, so really well done. That's excellent.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was a neat way of doing it. It was awesome.
Yeah, we'll continue it. Jen O'Donnell is the one who's responsible for first bringing it to us a couple of years ago, and given her enthusiasm for most things. It sort of did the osmosis thing throughout the primary, and then it came up here to the intermediary, and next we'll be working on the middle school too. They do a slightly different thing, but they can pick this up too.
Let me jump in. I will say that at our last series of grade level meetings a couple of 3 weeks ago, Putney teachers were sort of called on to provide some of the here's how we can do it for the rest of the grades in the district.
And one last thing, we're sort of getting into SBAC season for grades 3 through 8.
Can you define that?
Jeez,
I could.
tiny child.
It stands for Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium,
Okay.
and it is the testing that we do now throughout the state of Vermont for grades 3 through 8. Yeah. There's tons on the website if you want to look it up.
Okay.
More than you ever want to know. And so what we do in terms of process is we start with the kids just doing some practice tests and so forth. We make sure that everyone who may be involved in the testing, either as a test deliverer or as a support person for one of the kids who has some level of accommodation, goes through the certification thing. It's really simple. It's like you watch 15-minute video that's full of do's and don'ts, and then you say, yeah, okay, good, hit the button, you're good to go. The tests take a number of hours. They're not stacked on top of one another. Most of the teachers now have learned that they'll break them up into segments. It's an online environment, so one of the beauties of that is that you can hit pause as a student wherever you're at, and then go back to it the next time. You go back to the test and you just pick up where you left off. So it's compared to where we were with the kneecap, I think, and Paul could talk to this too, he's very experienced with it, but I think it's miles ahead of where we were just a few years ago, so it's good. So that's it, that's all I got.
That's great.
Thanks.
Committee reports, which I'm not sure there are any committee reports. Diversity has not met since last time. Finance.
SU Finance has not met.
Has not met.
I called Barb today, a date has not yet been set, unless you know of one, Paul, for SU Finance.
I will make sure that you get it if they're not already sending it to you. For example, I sent the
I got it
SU
now.
warrants to
Yeah.
everybody.
I got it. Frank's not.
Didn't know if he was sending, I swear I didn't see your name on the email list, but maybe I was just moving too quickly.
I got it. But thank you, I did see it.
Great.
Can I just point out, I watched the video from our last meeting and it's hard to hear. So if people just project as much as possible, this is going on channel 10 and our meetings will start being on BCTV. The only challenge is this audio isn't picking up all of our voices equally.
That doesn't surprise me. However, I'm perfectly capable of being much louder than this, actually. As far as I know, the Forest Committee has not met, but have been in touch. Yeah.
I spoke to Emily.
You did speak to Emily.
Emily seemed to be, I think at first was thinking perhaps she could manage to pass it off to me so she could do other things, but then she seemed to continue to be working on it anyway. So I guess she's been in touch with Lionel Shute, And they, I think, already had their March meeting, but there will be a work party on Sunday, I think at 2 p.m. And it sounds like maybe Lyle will perhaps take over the chairship of the Forest Committee itself.
You are so on this. Yeah, I've been in touch with Emily, and she recommended that Lionel be named chair, but she still intends to be involved. And she knows that Tim is now a board rep, so still working on it. The Putney Food Project, I don't think we assigned that committee. Anybody up for it? Or Jamie? All right.
I would love to.
I do not even know who the chair of that one is, so,
Putney Food Project? Excuse me. Is Marie that person?
Oh, like
Are you talking
For the
about
food
food
shop?
for kids
food for kids?
stuff?
the Putney Food Project just generally, I believe, encompasses everything we're doing here from farm to school to
Oh,
food
got
Oh,
it.
you mean the farm to school project?
That's just what she always called this committee.
Yeah, so, okay, yeah, so that has some clarity. Alice had been part of that. As far as present situation, I mean, Steve Head and I are talking about pulling together a meeting to start talking about garden and so forth, but other than that, I don't know anything specific, yeah.
Who shall I put Jamie in touch with? Steve?
Steve, yeah.
Okay. Buildings and grounds have
I
anything?
didn't have anything. I don't know if you did.
Well, other than the...
No, just, I mean, spring cleanup, and we do have one thing that we need to tackle. I'm expecting to get started on it this week, is that the drainage off the parking lot is an issue. There's a culvert that runs and exits over by that smaller of the two garden sheds down there, and it's pretty full. Culvert's it's probably a 14 incher. It's about 80% full of silt. So there's 3 drains out in the parking lot. One over by the silo, one over by where my parking space is, and then one down there. And so what happens is, the lot's pitched down to that area, and the water runs into that general vicinity, and then it gets into the drains and it shoots out that way. The problem is that since it's a watershed down there, you can't just, we couldn't just run a culvert down to the brook, right? You can't do that. So I'm going to meet next week with Eric McGowan and see if we can't come up with some intermediate solution. My guess is it's probably going to involve installing, first of all, we have to clean out the tubing, and I don't know exactly how that's going to happen because that's traditionally very expensive. But we'll probably put in like a dry well, and then have some drainage after it with some pea stone or something just to get it to dissipate. But that's the only big thing right now.
Okay, well, let us know how
Yeah, well,
that progresses.
it's probably going to involve some money, so.
Well, that doesn't come as any great surprise to me.
Right.
Fact, anything, is that your committee?
I think it might be me.
It's you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything. but-
I'm on the fact committee.
Okay.
Would you like me to make a quick?
I would love for you to make a quick report out.
First, would you define fact?
Sure, I don't exactly know what it stands for. I think it's Putney Health Action Community Team or something like that. And so
Okay.
as far as I know, it kind of is bringing all the different committee reps together to kind of talk about what's going on at school. And so I'm on there as a PTO and Food for Kids representative.
Okay.
There will be a staff luncheon coming up shortly that's sponsored by FACT as an appreciation. And one project that we all agreed to and Lynn Borowski has submitted funding for is to meet at the end of the school year to develop a calendar for next year, a year-long calendar with as many firm dates as possible for things like concerts, dances, safety, all of those events, wellness night, to help parents better plan for those events, knowing things can change. So,
So next time you have anything, can you copy Jamie in on like emails or whatever?
I think Kim.
Yeah.
sure, I can definitely get you added to the notes. Marissa is the one who takes the notes if you want Marissa Lazarus. And yes, Alice did sometimes come to our meetings, and I'm happy to share those meetings, make sure you're on the invite list. Jamie, is that you? Or
I
Tim?
think it's Tim.
Tim.
Yeah, I think I'm getting, because we just did it at our last
Okay.
meeting.
I think it was gonna be a dual thing and then
Yeah.
me.
No reason not to copy them both.
Okay, I'll send that to Marissa because she's the one who gets it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have no unfinished business that I recall.
Could I ask a committee question?
Sure.
When, is there an expectation that these committees meet, and if so, when? So that if I'm supposed to be representing the diversity and the food project committees, that, what are the expectations of me? Is it a monthly check back? Is there a monthly meeting? Is it quarterly? Is there somebody who's like a chair that you all touch base with?
Well, as far as diversity goes, it's second Wednesday at 3:45 in the BAM's conference room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second Wednesday, 3:45
Mm-hmm,
in BAMS.
yes.
So
and
diversity is SU-wide?
That is SUY, yes.
Oh, okay, so it's not a Putney Central School diversity.
No, it's not.
Okay, got it.
There are people here who are on that though.
Yes.
So like Ellen and Lauren.
Yeah, Ellen
typically
and Lauren,
Yeah.
on it, and of course, I've been on it for
Okay.
a while now.
Yeah. And then Putney Food Project, what was the level of involvement that Alice had in all the different projects, and what needs to be done from a board level?
Wow. Okay, so she was the genesis of the project going back now, I'd say maybe 5 years at this point, maybe
Yeah.
6.
Yeah, 5, 6.
She started the whole thing with us, and so initially it was very active and we were really rolling on it quite aggressively. And it's now in a place where we've got the food service established in-house. We have people who've expressed interest in the garden aspect of it. We're doing things that Paul got a grant for us for the fridge freezer. So some of this stuff is on autopilot in a way. And so it's more seasonal, you know. So we haven't felt compelled to meet, say, for example, you know, once we close the garden down, there hasn't really been much going on. So we will have a meeting pretty soon. Steve Head is pretty much in charge of pulling that together. And it's a relatively informal group, like whoever wants to be part of it can show up, and sometimes the membership at meetings varies from meeting to meeting, so it's not a formal thing. We usually have a couple of things that we need to try to decide in terms of what we might need for supplies and equipment for the upcoming season, whether or not we want to engage. Last year we had an intern help with some of the summer stuff. What the summer might look like in the garden is always problematic, just because of participation. So there'll be something coming up soon.
Okay, and then the food for kids is a part of it too?
Well, no, Food for Kids actually is, it's under the umbrella, but it's actually a project that Ellen is closely involved in, along with a handful of other people. And today's shopping day, so Thursday was the shopping day, which has been awesome. And they are responsible for maintaining the food shelf that we have here at school. So.
Great.
Eventually, we would like, and we've talked with her and Steve about incorporating some of the garden produce, because one of our goals is to help kids expand their palate and taste test. So long-term, that's on our agenda, to work closely together.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do we have any unfinished business that I just didn't think of? Okay. So moving
I have
on.
a question.
Sure.
For the things that I want to talk to about that aren't on the agenda, is this the time for it, or do I have to wait for new
Well,
business?
new business is coming
Okay.
right now. so-
I don't understand that difference. difference between unfinished and new.
It's something we talked about in meeting before.
Yeah,
And
okay.
that we maybe had to
Okay,
follow
got
up on, like if Herb was having a problem with the pellet boiler.
Okay,
We
got
could
it.
talk about that
Right.
again.
No, I'm done with that.
Okay,
I'm
got
done with it.
Yes, he's talking good things about the pellet boiler.
Yeah.
And these 1% applications, which we should probably plow through, would come under new business as well.
Yeah.
So, would you like to
Yeah, so,
explain it to us?
yeah, sure, let me just take a look at it.
Is that one?
So, for newbies, there is a set aside in the teacher's contract, and it's commonly referred to as the 1% fund. So 1% of the wages are set aside for additional professional development or particular circumstances that might be over and above what each teacher is allotted, including things like these things, which are, so for example, this first one is the FACT Committee, which is the Putney Health Action Committee. And it's currently Borowski, Lazarus, Bristol, Cassidy, Fields, and would be the new nurse would be on this committee. They want to meet for 2 hours this summer to schedule activities like wellness nights, student PTO events, etc., calendar dates for the 1920 school year, for FACT type stuff. That would be things like, we have a school wellness night, we have a school safety day, those sorts of things those folks would be in charge of putting together. And they want to spread the events up through the year. So 6 people for 2 hours each on the per diem rate, which is, I forget what it is right now. They didn't write it on here, but, so we'll send this down with Paul, once the board signs off on it. They'll send it down, Barb Nowakowski will fill it out, and when people complete the work, they can put in for payment and they get their check. So that's the first one. So are there any questions about that? It's pretty straightforward. So I'll give you that, thank you. And the other one is the PBIS team, which is at Lake Maury right now, and the 3 reps that are presently there on this 2-day conference are Lynn Borowski, Sarah Cassidy, Matt Bristol. Oh, there was actually 4 people. Marissa Lazarus is there. The reason her name isn't on this 1% request is that the counselor and the principal are the 2 people who have travel expense accounts, and that's it. So when there's lodging that's required for something like this, we usually try to funnel it through 1%. So that's what this is, and it's for 3 people. They have 2 rooms. Each room 2 times 3. Yeah, that's right. So $441.45 is the expense here, and if you care to know anything about the conference, there's a little thing right here. Our long history with PBIS, we are now in year 10 of PBIS here at this school, and like any other sort of thing that we engage in, you have to keep it fresh, keep it interesting, keep it moving along. And so this specific workshop is to do exactly that. It's called a refresher workshop. So people can go up there, get some new ideas about how to continue the long-running program here at PCS. So that's that.
Okay.
So you need motions on those.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Which we can't make without our reading list. Okay, I move we approve the application of 1% funds for the PBIS team in the amount of $441.45.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and I don't have a determinate number on this, so I move that we approve 1% funds for 6 members of the FACT committee for 2 hours each over the summer. The dollar amount is predetermined. It just has to actually happen before they can get paid. So,
Just to give you a ballpark, base per diem is less than $30 an hour, between 20 and 30 an hour. So that would be on the order of something under $400.
yeah.
6 people, 2 hours, $30 an hour is about $360, $380.
And these funds are set aside in advance, so we're not making any strange. So, do I have a second on that one?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. approved. This requires your signature, Tim, and then either of your signatures.
So here?
Yeah, where it says member, and then we'll find that. He doesn't, okay, one of each of you is going to sign one,
Share.
that's cool. Great. So moving on, Jamie had already talked about BCTV. Is there anything else we want to say, other than we hope to get in a situation where we can approve our equipment? My son is off the table for the time being, so.
So I don't know how long Doug Grant is going to volunteer to do our, I'm seeing 2 thumbs up, so Doug's been our community volunteer recording our meetings since the March 5th town meeting that we had in the reorganization of the school board. And so some of us have discussed and volunteered to help pay for the filming of all the school board meetings moving forward. There was a discussion of funds needed. At this point, BCTV says it's a little over $100 per meeting. So we got our first video uploaded, and they're going to actually create a channel for us on BCTV for Putney Central School Board meetings. So if you go on, you can see all, and you go into BCTV, you can actually see the channels of all the different schools in our region who have all their meetings up. So we will start to have a channel where you can stream all the meetings you miss. So I'm going to talk in a little bit about a communications plan, just to make sure people know that is out there and available. The real question, I think, is what we asked last time and then heard back, I think from, is it Frank Rucker, right? We had asked if we could do a GoFundMe and just shoot it out to everybody to pay for the meetings. I think he expressed concern about directly linking it to the school's finances, and so I was going to ask a volunteer to manage the GoFundMe and then write a check to the school. And so
As some sort of donation?
that's just a donation that's not tied in.
Well, my suggestion would be to check with him on that concept too.
Yeah.
Because they're understandably very leery about cash or checks being in any place other than direct deposit, so. But just check with Frank, or
Yeah.
Annie could check with Frank and give you the lowdown on that.
We are able to
Kind of beyond me.
checks though.
Yeah, so just to kind of, because of his concerns around direct connecting GoFundMe to the bank accounts of the school, so we were looking at doing that outside of any kind of school group and just having a volunteer do it and then cut a check to the school
I see.
yeah.
That might
So
be fine.
I think there won't be any connection to the school, so I'm just putting it out there on BCTV and to all of the folks here. We're looking for a volunteer to help host our GoFundMe page, or not our. If somebody wants to host a GoFundMe page to help with BCTV costs, let me know.
Jamie, how much is it per?
It's about
meeting?
$100 per meeting. And so what other districts have allotted is, because there's 2 meetings a month, they have done 1 meeting videotaped
Okay.
by BCTV, and then you have to raise about $1,200. So it's an amount that, we already have a couple of folks who've pledged to cover 1 meeting. So we want to raise the remainder. Understanding that the Putney Central School Board may have 6 meetings left. So at that point, decisions can be made about where to apply the resources.
Okay, so moving on, the transitional board appointments that we were going to talk about this time, we now have to talk about. I'm still happy to go. I entertain any suggestions otherwise or as well. And of course, all of us can show up for any meeting that we want to.
I was really passionate about this process of the Putney Central School presence on the transition board, and also the process that creates the unified board. And so I wanted to ask if people would consider sending me as a representative to the transition board. And I'm happy to speak more to that, or I can stop talking.
Well, I guess it depends. Does anyone else have a burning desire to join the transition board? Okay,
All right.
so,
Could you speak a little more about it?
Yeah, so how to do this concisely. So this week, there are, at this point, there was a vote taken in February. I can't remember the date. Can you remember what? February 27th was the first meeting of the transition board. One of the first things that happened was a motion to postpone to April 2nd. So there has been a process of either, what was the first, the January reason we didn't meet? What was it called? I said it was a stay, and someone told me that was not accurate.
Temporary injunction?
And temporary injunction that prevented the first transition.
no, that wasn't what was granted.
Okay, so there was some legal
It's a
thing
recommendation.
that happened that prevented the January transition meeting. February, the body took a vote, and the majority was in favor of postponement, and then that date was chosen as April 2nd. The first transition meeting will happen this coming Tuesday, so this is the last Putney Central School Board meeting before the transition board meets. The process, as I understand, and I wanted to just put it out there to everybody to kind of just have us flesh this out collectively with all of our knowledge, is that on April 2nd, one of the primary things we're going to do is call, or warn an election, because we have, I think, 30 days then to warn the election, and so, or we can warn an election and it has to be within or after 30 days.
There's
It
a
has to be
certain
30
amount of
days
time that the warning has to be in place before you can hold the election.
At least
Okay,
30 days.
so at
has
least
passed.
30 days. So that means as early as the beginning of May, we could have the first election for the unified board. And so, and then we would essentially have meetings April, May, and June with the unified board taking effect and the dissolving of the Putney Central School Board. So dissolving the Putney Central School Board at the end of June and the beginning of the unified board taking effect in July 1.
July 1.
So is this all accurate?
The dissolving will depend on how the House and Senate versions of H39
Yes,
balance out.
yes. So then, do you want to say anything to that? Because I was going to say there's two things that could impact what I just described.
The first thing is a piece of legislation that was passed, 53 something very small, in the Senate, which is a different version of the bill that the House passed, granting basically a one-year extension, and the House version wants to give that extension to anyone who didn't form a study committee and do all the work required. And the Senate version wants school districts to make the choice for themselves. Any school merging on time by their agenda that is will be eligible for a small schools grant, if they are eligible for a small schools grant. Anyone merging afterward will have to apply. And we haven't had a small schools grant in years, have we?
It's probably been about 4 years
Yeah, that's what I
or
thought.
so, yeah.
So it's not, the small schools grant is not directly about us, but it will be about, for example, Guilford. So the other thing that may happen is something may happen with the lawsuit. A number of districts have sued to declare Act 46 unconstitutional on several grounds. The appellate judge does not look like he is particularly interested in overturning it, so I would expect to see an appeal to the Vermont Supreme Court, but I do not know how long that will take or what form it will take. Liz?
They're in court again on April 12th.
Okay. I knew that they were there.
to reply to the state.
Well, I've been advised by a lawyer that the position that the appellate court judge is currently taking is fairly normal. We
Yeah.
won't want to really rock a big piece of legislation like that, and we'll leave it up to the Supreme Court.
So we have a court case in play and we have legislation in play. And we're expected on April 2nd to warn an election for the unified board, and you have 3 months to do the work of preparing for the unified board if the court or the legislative process doesn't come to fruition in a way that would delay the process. So it's my understanding, this is kind of what I wanted to put out there and ask folks, is it everyone's understanding, or who wants to inform me, that we will, 1, have to warn an election, 2, we'll have to merge 4 school districts' budgets?
Yes, we will have to put them together
Yeah.
as one large budget for the entire new school district.
And is it a 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 4? Or is it going to be 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 4, and then a number of things that people are going to be asking us to do after that?
5, actually. The high
Oh.
school, middle school,
Excuse me.
career center are their own school district. as
Okay,
well.
so 5. So I guess my question is what is the understanding of this body of any requests that are going to be done to change the budget after we begin the process of unification?
No one knows really.
Let me make us, my understanding is that Frank, the business manager, has had to be on a dual track, and people on the finance committee can confirm this.
He just-
I was just
Okay.
nominated to it.
Okay,
I'm aware of it.
The instruction and the information that's being provided from the state is all based on the notion that there will be a merger. So for instance, the equalized pupil counts are all based on a single district, not individual districts like we have now. That's why there were estimates in the budgets that were presented at town meeting rather than actual numbers that we would have otherwise got.
Right.
So there's been a dual track all the way along. And the budget, there is a prepared budget for the unified union. Well, it would be that whatever the construct is that happens, Vernon plus Wissy-Usti, the Wyndham Southeast Unified Union School District. And WSSU is the umbrella over that, right? So that budget has been prepared, and changes to budgets at this point, once they're approved at town meetings, you don't change those budgets, right?
So I mean the process of what we will do in the transition board.
Again, I am not necessarily the person. My understanding is that the transition board has a look at the budget and makes a recommendation, has a number of options, including simply handing that budget to the new board, or making some changes and handing it to the new board. That's my understanding.
And so who would be responsible for gathering suggested changes or recommending suggested changes? Would that happen at the transitional board meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
Could, and likely also in the process of budget discussions for the new board, once it's formed. Because they'll have to approve it, so it'll go
Okay.
through a
So will that
process.
happen with you in finance meetings?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think we'll
I-
know more on the 2nd.
Okay, good.
Because-
I just wanted to make sure we were clear about if there was going to be some very fast-moving things. 3 months is a short period of time to do a lot. And so I'm just very curious about what else that means. And then the last thing was trying to understand the movement of teachers from being Putney Central School staff to unified staff. What process or support is needed for that?
I think that's a horse that's ahead of the cart, way ahead right now.
Yeah, at
There's
this
no
point,
anticipated changes, imminent changes. I mean, I don't think there's any, that's not even on the radar right now.
there are no rifts built into that budget.
Right.
However, with the delay, we can't issue contracts.
That's right.
We can issue letters of intent, however.
So it's not until the unified board or the decision from the court or the legislature makes some kind of decision that contracts can proceed?
Right, so what if the transition board, okay, go ahead, sir.
We'll need an approved final budget before contracts, real contracts can be issued,
Okay.
as far as I understand it.
And that's a decision the unified board will make,
Once
if it is
they
formed.
approve the-
Right, and
their
if it is
budget.
formed now, as opposed to next year.
Exactly.
We
Yeah.
may have a whole year to work on this.
Got it.
It has been recommended for some time that our budgets, we sort of plan on the
Yeah.
first year budget of
Mhm.
a new school district being an amalgamation of the ones that we already developed at the end.
I've heard that, I wondered if, okay,
But as Paul pointed out,
yeah, right.
some of those numbers are theoretical because the new software system that the Agency of Education implemented doesn't count those things
Mhm.
at the individual school district level as we exist now. It only counts them
Mhm.
on a larger level.
Mhm. But haven't we already, isn't there already a human resource officer who's been hired, I thought, in order to support the process of switching folks from the individual schools over to the unified board?
That was more about the new requirements of the Affordable Care Act. We had a really crackerjack HR person who juggled so many things that, and, you know, it came to a point where all of the changes, all of the new documentation, and frankly, the degree to which the IRS is really holding us our feet to the fire to make sure all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed, we really need two people rather than one.
And from what I understand, the consequences of being out of compliance with those things are
Huge.
huge.
Yeah.
They're very.
So it was more about that than about a new system. In fact, I mean, from where I sit, a new system would be vastly more efficient for finances, for instance. Just because you're dealing with one fiscal entity, not 10.
More efficient, but more difficult for the people to understand. Indeed, for the school
Just-
boards to
just-
understand.
As preface it by saying, just from where I sit,
Yes, of
the
course.
job that I do.
Right, I don't think there's anything in the forced merger contract that the state sent out. There are articles
The
that
default articles of agreement.
just, that says you have to move all the staff to the SU level.
That would be the case though, because the Putney Town School District, for example, would cease to exist.
Right, but, so the thinking being,
There are, much like we handle special education now, that there's an employment pool that is the large school district, the merged school
Right.
district. And
but
teacher assignments will be determined the usual way. What do we need, what do other people need? But yeah, they do have to be made employees of a single IRS entity.
right, but within that, you can designate teachers to a certain.
Oh, yeah. That
So that, you know, you set it up, so yeah, the SU employs them, but all these teachers are assigned to Putney Central School, and somebody can't just come in and say, wow, we really like your third grade teacher, and we really want them over at that school, to prevent that kind of thing from happening.
there is no guarantees of anything at this point. Those
We're
decisions will be
We're
made,
making brains privately.
the decisions will be probably arrived at by administration at the SU level, and then board reps will argue about it and/or approve it or disapprove it, just as we do now.
I think one of the reasons I was asking some of these questions is because I've been a community organizer and a political organizer for a long time, and one of the things that happens in preparation for moving quickly is that very strategic conversations happen about how to make sure the pathways are ready to move very quickly. And so what I'm asking is who is having those conversations so that we can all understand what is being put in place to move quickly, so we understand when it gets to the point of all of a sudden we have the equation from the Agency of Education and oops, look, the numbers didn't quite match, that we're not having these radical conversations very quickly without much information and support. So I think that's where I'm trying to kind of understand how these processes work and how they are working currently, just so that we're really able to be thoughtful and educated in the decisions, particularly as I'm really curious how we're going to support our teachers and our staff to feel supported. Because if I was a teacher and there was discussion about the fact that I was moving from being a Putney Central School teacher to a unified board school teacher, I would want to know that we were supporting our teachers and our staff in that process. And I'd also want to make sure people were clear too about just the fact that what the process is for changing properties, so that the properties are all owned by a unified district and no longer Putney County.
That's built into the,
Yeah,
to the legislation. It just,
Yeah.
when the switch is flipped, that happens.
yeah,
And so that's what was the underpinnings of the consideration of putting the school forest, for example, into a nonprofit, which was a process that
yeah.
was kind of, I don't know, maybe a year and a half in discussion by the time we finally,
Yeah.
you can, I think that's about right. So it's stuff like that, but other than that, it's joint property with the new district.
Just so I understand for sure, so what you're saying is it's not like the interim board will like vote to transfer the property, it will just happen when PTSD ceases to exist?
Well, that's my understanding. Yeah,
So-
yeah.
As far as I understand it,
I'm sorry, so that'll just happen when there'll be a vote, or will happen?
No.
Okay,
there's no
it will just
vote.
happen organically.
Yeah, it's part of the
vote
regular-
will cease to
it's
exist.
part of the legislation.
I think that's why there was the discussion of transferring the Putney Forest to a nonprofit.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
Emerson Fields.
I was just trying to understand if it was something that the interim board is going to be voting on, like, as like, oh, we're signing over the papers now, or it will just happen?
Well, I couldn't say about some
Things to be
transfer,
signed.
there probably will be some signing involved,
that's probably.
but that's sort of beyond my,
But it won't be the interim board, it will be the merged
It would be
board.
I think
the
that's right.
However,
That's
yeah.
fine.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And as far as supporting our teachers, we learned how to do that a couple of years ago when special education used to be in the school and the special education teachers were Putney's employees. Now they're SU employees and they're allotted to schools, but it's not like they just jump up and move around all the time,
Yeah, right.
except to school kind of special ed teachers.
So part of my question was, do we have you already outlined because of that? Is there going to be an info session? Is Herb going to be available to have, I'm just wondering what process is.
My primary responsibility is to this building and the people who are here. What you're talking about sounds to me like more sort of global, district-wide issues.
No, I'm saying about how do we support the Putney Central School teachers and staff in the transition process? So that they understand what's happening.
Well, don't forget, they have a pretty strong teachers association that's been involved from the get-go in these conversations, so, we talked about it in faculty meetings. I've shared what I know about the process, always being careful to qualify what I know with, I'm not on the inside track to most of this, some of this stuff. There was, initially there was some consternation about, either, the most extreme view, closing a school or shifting people around. Annie's right, some of the stuff that already happens, we do share people. So we have a part-time speech therapist, speech and language person who comes a couple days a week. We have PT that comes once a week for a handful of kids on Friday. So it's not an alien concept to us, and we'll see. I mean, we're sort of used to people coming and going already. Not I wouldn't imagine a scenario where we'd say, hey, we're going to have first grade 3 days a week, and then the other 2 they're going to be down at academy school. I mean, that's
That's a non-starter.
Well, that's what I mean. So if you look at it from a practical standpoint, you may at some point see an opportunity where you would want to share specials or something, or you might want to say, hey, it'd be nice if we had Spanish teacher 2 days a week, and anybody game for that sort of thing? Those are the more practical, I think, things that might present themselves as options down the road.
Can I ask a question to Herb's point?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Okay, to Herb's point, one of the opportunities I see here for us is for transparency, which I know there's been a lot of effort to make this whole process clear for the past years. And I've watched a lot of meetings on BCTV. I'm pretty involved at school and I still get confused. Things that tend to scare parents are hearing something like sharing specials when, you know, a lot of us chose this school because of the program offerings. And I'm wondering if there's a way to explain this or post it in a way like FAQs for parents, because I field a lot of questions from parents about this because I'm here a lot and I don't know the answer to something like that. Like, what does it mean to share specials? Does that mean that we're going to lose our full-time PE teacher?
It doesn't mean anything at this point because no decisions have been made.
Yeah, it's hypothetical. I mean,
Most of the
Yeah.
other primary schools, however, do not have full-time art,
Right.
music, and PE.
Yes.
So can I respond? And I am a new kid on the school board, and so I want to apologize for any offense anybody takes at what I'm about to say. And I'm going to be very careful at how I say it, but I'm going to be very honest about one of the reasons I ran for the school board. Because I think we have to talk about these things because they're realities statewide about why mergers happen. You save money by reducing staff, sharing staff, and school closures. That's how you save money. There's been a lot of discussions about the cost savings of how do we make 10 into 1. I would love to see central admin say, hey, you only need me for 1/10 of my time now, so cut me down to 1/10 of my job. And then we'll use that money to make sure we make up any concerns around programming for kids. Because if that was on the table, that would be a whole different thing. Because in my experience as a senior staff in the organization I work for, I'm one of the better paid staff with better benefits. And so when you reduce my salary and benefits, it frees a lot up for other programming staff. So I think that's something that I'm thinking about a lot, about cost savings. And I've had 2 conversations, and this is why I'm trying to decide if I name who said it. I had somebody on the school board who told me in a forum to my face when I said I'm concerned about the middle school at Putney Central School, and they looked right at me and said, it depends on what you mean about safe. We'll probably send our 7th and 8th graders to Dummerston, and Dummerston will probably send their pre-Kers to us, because we rock on pre-K, and we'll probably need to send our kids to Dummerston for middle school. So I want to say that if those are the conversations that people are already having, I want to be thoughtful and not, what's the word, where you try to freak people out.
Fear-mongering.
I don't want to be fear-mongering,
Right.
but the reason I ran for the board is because of those kinds of conversations that are happening from people who have been a part of the process for a very long time. And I've also been told librarians, PE teachers, and art teachers are a place where we have specials that are unique to Putney Central. And when you start having these conversations, you have to start looking at what that means. So I really want to just put that on the table, that those conversations are happening, and without fear-mongering, that we have to be willing to talk about this in a really honest way with each other, without attacking each other, without, one of the things I'm hoping is that we're going to be able to talk about really hard stuff without attacking each other, ever. And so I just want to be able to have a safe place to talk about hard stuff in a way that's not fear-mongering, but is honest.
So could I just speak to that just for a second?
Okay.
As the school leader here of a pre-K through 8 environment and a strong advocate of pre-K through 8 environment, I've never been part of any of those conversations and would advocate strongly for maintaining the integrity of this system. Now, we have about 180 kids here, pre-K through 8, a couple of anomalous classrooms. So if I took the 2 highest out of 25 and 26 and my 16-person pre-K, that's a big percentage of the school. There has been a decline in enrollment, it's pretty steady over the past 10, 12, almost 15 years. So it's hard to predict what could happen 5 or 7 years down the road. But from my point of view, I'm pretty cemented in my belief that this is the best possible environment that we can provide for kids pre-K through 8 for lots of reasons. And I would advocate strongly for that. But, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, I'm only one person. And I have never been privy to any of those conversations about closing schools or combining schools or any of that. So I just want to go on the record as saying that that is not even on my personal radar. So I just want to put
Thank
that
you,
out.
Herb. I really appreciate
Yeah.
you saying that. And I want to say, as a parent whose child is in pre-K, that I'm really grateful to you for naming that.
Well, we'll see. I mean, you know, I'm one guy.
I can't call on you.
I have something to say first.
Okay.
Conversations that we have, for the most part, will have to be held in open meeting. That's the law, and that's what we have to do. That being said, apparently there was planning going on about what the whole school district was going to do, but it was limited to 3 people. 2 of them are gone. So we have no idea what other members of a merged board will think. It's all brand new. We haven't even begun those negotiations for real, but we have to have them in open meeting. And that's really annoying sometimes, because sometimes I just want to be like, Sergio, you're an idiot. You know, but not really. As an example, see, sorry, when I pick an example, I always pick the most absurd thing I could think of, and calling Sergio an idiot is about the most absurd thing.
And I want to support a culture of respect.
Yes, I know. I was trying to think of something.
Is that an example?
It's quick, yeah.
You feel insulted, you choose me.
Okay, we all take a punch at my husband once a
Right.
week. How about that? Sometimes we want to say things like that, and it makes it hard to do an open meeting. It will not always be civilized. People are going to get angry, no matter what decisions you make. Guilford is greatly in favor of this because they want us to give them money because they're worried about their school. Their worries are not unreasonable. Brattleboro has 3 schools. Each of our towns have 1. And in so many ways, our schools are our towns. And the people who will wind up running our towns probably met each other while their kids were here at school. But any plans that have been made should be considered off the table because the people who made them are no longer on the school board.
Thank you for naming that we need to do things in public and make agreements in public.
Yes.
I appreciate that leadership, Anne.
Liz, I'm sorry. But go ahead.
Okay, so if you go back and you look at the original proposed merger, way in the back, they were proposing equal education across the district, not equitable. And that's where those numbers, that's what those particular people were referring to about phys ed and art and music. Because they wanted equal, and that's not what the law calls for. It calls for equitable. So if we don't want, whatever, Spanish in K through 5, that's fine. We have a strong forest program. We have more art, and, you know, that's equitable. So they were all, those people are kind of, for lack of a better word, they lost their marbles. Because if you even read the Dummerston School Board's minutes, you would know that they had a pre-K in there fully paid for. And if you think about it, it's like absurd, there's no room to understand. Yeah, so I think, some people just went off the deep end. But if you go back and you look at the original merger thing, and that's something that I would hope a new board would just throw out, because it was all based on the PICUS report. And it was all equal. It had nothing to do with equity.
Liz, I want to name how much I appreciate that you read everything and you are such a student of policy. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also would like to bring up, so that you guys know, I've been following Bill, I read everybody's minutes.
You're not the only one.
You have to kind of stay on top of it, and they're seeing increasing costs from sending their 7th and 8th graders to BAMS. That was part of the original deal, and that's what's really hitting them hard. But then at the meetings in January, I think it was the town moderator or something, said, we knew this was going to happen. I'm sure the taxpayers will be fine with it. So, and then I compared numbers as best I could, and what they're paying for to go to BAMS is more than what our 6 to 8 costs. So, they obviously think it's worth it.
Again, I believe strongly that anything you heard about what is going to be done, just consider it gone. We have to reopen those negotiations. We know more now about how Act 46 has played out in towns that have merged. For example, over at, what the heck are they called? West River?
Oh, God.
Leland and Gray, those people.
Yeah.
Their student spending, their per pupil spending is over $21,000. Their taxpayers just rejected that. And that is with the 8-cent incentive, that is with some small school stuff and with cutting programs. Over $21,000.
And did you see a breakout? Is that partially related to busing?
I do not know, because I did not see the breakout. I only have the information.
I think it's partially related to moving 6th grade to right?
Yeah. So,
Higher staff. But, yeah, they rejected it.
Some of the particulars of that district may be difficult to interpret within that context.
Do you have some analysis?
I think I would hate to speak about a district that is not where I live and that I don't know intimately. What I know of being in this area is that it's a huge geographic district. I think it's the biggest or the second biggest in terms of catchment, second biggest. And declining student populations there have been pretty massive.
Yeah.
Leland and Gray is, I don't know how many kids are there right now, but they're
Not a ton.
not a ton. So when you look at
So it could be gas for busing that.
yeah, I think that's part of it, but I think it's also speaks to the larger concern of declining population, declining student population, rising education costs. I mean, it's back to the same thing, but some of the things, as far as I know, and again, I'm no expert on, Leland and Gray and that district. Some of the folks may certainly know more than I, but some of the issues that are there are very historical, long-standing, and have been trending in certain directions way before any of these conversations.
well, of course, it was just an example of the decisions that we make now. We will have the benefit of the experiences of other districts that merged. And some of them were like, hey, great, they merged, bing, bang, boom, and they're fine.
Yeah.
So,
I think it may be apples to oranges.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. But now that we have knowledge that we did not have, it was all purely theoretical. Now we are seeing practical applications, not just over there, but in other parts of the state. So
This is what I really appreciate, is that we have data now. When I asked Frank about expenditures at town meeting and said I was expressing concern about raising costs in voluntary merged districts, Frank's comment back was that the studies leading up to the merger did not prove what I was saying. And it was lunchtime, so it wasn't a chance in hell I was going to raise my hand again and have the whole population of Putney turn on me. But my concern was that the data is already coming in statewide on voluntarily merged districts, and so what does that mean for us? And that's the kind of stuff I'm excited to talk to you about when you're on the finance committee is, what does this mean for us? You know, are these anomalies? If you've got that level of analysis, I would love
I don't know.
to talk to you about it.
Wait a minute, Jamie, the AO is not keeping track of it. The AOE.
Yes.
I guess what I would like to say is really express a hope based on some observations that I've made in the course of this. And the observation that I can make is on both sides of all of this discussion, I have observed people acting in what they believe are the best interests of the students in this school and in the schools in the district. Mm-hmm. And I hope, based on that, that folks will extend respect and the assumption that everyone is working, maybe have quite different opinions, but is working in the best, in what they believe is the best interest of children. And it hurts me to hear people badmouth because of the way, apparently badmouth because of their opinions, because of their actions, rather than because of the fact that they're acting on those beliefs.
Do you feel someone's being badmouthed, Paul?
Yeah, I do. I feel like aspersions are being cast on the motives of individuals who are not present here tonight.
Oh, do you mean here in this meeting?
Right now,
Oh,
yes,
good.
yes. I think.
If I've done that, I apologize. Other than I will say that they were meeting outside of the open
Yeah.
meeting process, making plans that are now not negatives.
Yeah.
We're going to make our own plans.
It-
Not just us, everyone.
And really, it's more like extending the sort of a suspend. I don't know how to say it. It's extending respect, even though you might disagree with something.
I spent the entire process actually making absolutely sure I do that and reminding people that the person I most vehemently disagree with has done so much. So much. And I do believe that they think they're doing the right thing. And in the end, we may not have a choice. We don't know how that will happen, but what I do know is, again, we've all learned from this experience. We are learning from other people's experiences, and we will absolutely, I'm so impressed with what I'm hearing from people from other boards. We are all going to try to do our level best for all of our kids, and it will be hard, but we don't have a choice because we've got great schools, we've got great staff, we've got great teachers, and that's what we want to keep. So even if we do something that we don't wish to do, which is merge, I for one intend to make sure that the interests of Putney remain in the front of my mind, and that the interests of everyone else remain in the rest of my mind. We don't always get to choose. This time we might not, but in the meantime, we're going to do the best we can, and that's all we've got. Are we good with all of this?
I think the only thing that I'm interested in talking about, I think we're on what? Are we on the transition? Are we on the board vacancy now? Okay, so the only things that I had in addition to this was something I wrote up that I wanted to see if we could agree on for how we increase our communication, just welcoming people to the board meetings. I was really struck, I don't know who Alice Laughlin's letter of resignation went to, and I would love to find out who, but one of the things that was really important to me was that I go on record as saying I always want to be a part of a process to support diverse opinions, to come out and talk to each other honestly and openly in a safe space. And one of the concerns I had about the letter of resignation was a very specific line. I'll see if I can find it. But it said, however, with the priorities, understandings, and tone of the current board majority, there is no room for a productive path forward. So I wanted to just find out who that letter went to, because I wanted to make sure that everybody, all of the parents, all of the staff, all of the teachers, Herb feels like he's in a safe place, like, all, you know, anybody, that we can have these really hard conversations. People's opinions are welcome and valued, and that everyone is valued, no matter what perspective they hold. That is the critical path forward for Putney Central School. It is what we expect of our children, it is what we should expect of ourselves. And I saw something for politicians years ago, if they only could learn the rules of the kindergartners. And I was just like, it was something like a kindergartner teacher's rules for how you treat each other. And it was like, we just have to teach the folks in the US Senate this, and we'll be fine. And so I feel like we have to take that same recommendation and pretend we're all 5. And Valerie's here asking us to behave ourselves in a really loving way. So I just want to say that I would like to communicate outwardly and check in with Herb about communicating via the Putney Central School. I don't know what our process is, so if I'm out of order, you can tell me. But communicate with everybody saying, we've changed the time of the board meetings, we've added BCTV so you can participate and watch them. We invite you to come on the 2nd and 4th Thursdays, just like really simple.
Just send something to me.
Yeah. So I wrote it up so we could look at it and see if we agreed to it. And then, I don't know if this is taking too long. And then the only other thing was, I'm a communications person in the nonprofit sector. And I went when I was trying to decide to run for the Putney Central School Board to find everything I could find. And all we had, have you guys gone to our website? It was very sparse. And I didn't even know where the meeting was. It said, I think, Putney Central School, right? And a time, but it didn't lay out anything else. So please Google it if you haven't been there lately. And instead, I would like to put this on the website. Thank you for your interest in the Putney Central School Board. We meet the 2nd and 4th Thursdays of each month at 6:30 at Putney Central School in a classroom next to the library. We invite you to join us for our meetings that last from 1 to 2 hours generally. Please go here to see our agendas and here for all meeting minutes. And then I put in a statement of what a school board is. I figured you guys could figure out how to write that in a really simple way. Because for many folks, what the heck's a school board and what do they spend their time doing? I thought we could write something interesting about committees or something. How awesome Sergio's job is for finance. And then please check out BCTV to find our meetings and watch them for updates and include a link. So something super simple, we just put it on our website. I looked at school boards around the state and saw some had really sexy web pages, and I was like, ooh, I want just a little bit more of something that's that inviting. And then this other statement is much longer, so I won't, let me see if I have enough. How many do I have? I think I have enough for you guys. So the top one is something that I was thinking for language that would go out to parents, and I think it was a first draft and I wrote it in like 2 minutes, so it's going to need edits, but I just wanted to get something on paper that would go out to Putney Central School parents to start getting them, like, knowing that this was a space for them and a space for all kinds of questions and opinions, and demonstrate that there is a pathway forward. And a productive one at that.
That's great. This classroom, by the way, is a middle school writing room,
Okay.
as its official name.
Yeah, you
Does it have a number?
We could put that, but that still wouldn't mean anything to me.
Parenthetically, you could put Amanda Dixon's room opposite the library.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I
So
need that.
one thing that I noticed that's sort of missing here is that you need, my suggestion, right?
Yes, yeah,
Is that
please.
you would have some clarification about the temporary status of this particular constellation of
I actually
board members.
deleted all of that because I thought it would be too controversial, but the other part I included was, well, not because I added like a couple other sections, and that was the temporary nature of this body.
Yeah.
And then I added an update on the fact that I wanted to say what the 2 pathways forward were in a synopsis. But I felt like that was so politically charged that it would lead us into some kind of like long conversation. So what I was going to suggest was something simple that said, this body is temporary in nature if, and then give the 2 ifs, and then say,
So let's see you guys think of something.
right? So just something is non-opinionated as
We don't have a
subjective or
space for
objective.
comments, so.
Yeah, right. So I think
On the
we should
webpage.
even add to what you said, Herb.
Is this the
This is the
PCS's
page
website or
for
the
the-
SU's website page?
Well, I
So
was
it's-
told that they were, like,
The SU has a PTSD link.
but it just goes back to ours. I kept going all the different places to be like, am I missing the sexy website?
The
And
school
I never
website.
found it.
If you click on the thing that says school website, it will
Yeah.
take you back to the,
It just
Use
keeps
one
coming
of
back to
those.
ours.
Yeah, this, right here.
yeah,
That's
Which
it.
is minutes and all that stuff, yeah.
right, but if you click on the school site there
Sure.
somewhere, it will take you back to
But
the
that's the
very
SU.
pretty,
That's
but,
the SU.
Hosted by the SU.
yeah.
Everything comes, all links, no matter if you're at the SU or the Putney Central School website, all come back to the same landing page. And so, based on the pathways I was able to find, and so I was like, could we just make that landing page a little bit different? So who does the edits on those, was my first question. Okay, so.
Yeah, part of it is, one of the pieces here is that the idea was to get all of the boards having a similar, coming off of the WSCSU homepage, have a sort of a similar look and feel, but that there would be some editing ability in order, for instance, to put minutes in. And I'm not sure how the minutes are, whether you're loading them or you're.
I sent it to SU.
I load them on our site, on
Okay.
the school board page, there's several years.
That have you
worth
been
Right.
for this
of
one?
minutes there.
But it is certainly
Links to
possible to add links and other information to
So that's
this
her,
particular.
we have somebody who does that, is that you?
Well, I work with somebody,
Who does it?
our IT
Yeah,
person.
Adrian
Adrian
easily
Longier.
do that.
So we could approve something, could we approve it by email? It's pretty simple and it would need to be on some editable,
And he knows the rules for open meeting there. There's a provision.
Don't,
I mean, all we're doing is creating
Hold off to the next
language.
meeting, I think.
yeah, I think we have to hold off till our next meeting.
We can do like a Google Doc if we're all present and we're in an open meeting, but then we have to close it down once we adjourn, as far as I understand, from what I remember.
Yeah,
So could we at least approve this language? So we could put something up? I just want the BCT, I thought that might be the case, so I was like, just get something in writing that can, and then we could edit it better next time. And I could write up what Herb just said, and then I could read it, and then we could approve it while we're getting to the rest of our business.
sure, our business at the moment is, what's left is that we need a board member. So send out feelers, anyone who wishes to apply to be on board, please write to the chair, which is me, care of the SU, 53 Green Street, Brattleboro, 05301. And, please, it's just a letter, it's not like a formal application. Expressing interest, there have not been any replies so far. So,
Sorry, do we still need to vote to appoint someone to the interim board? Or is, I know, so far we only have,
Oh, did we not?
You know
we've
what?
never voted.
let's vote on it, because I don't know if we have to, but if we have, then
So we're-
I think I went on a diatribe for an hour when we got to that part of the agenda.
Good call. Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Sorry, we're-
We're voting to send me and Jamie to the transition board.
Well, I don't know if we were still voting on you as well, should we just form a vote and vote?
Board chairs are automatically appointed.
Yeah.
The board-
Board chair.
It was the board chair as of June 30th, 2018. But however, boards are allowed to vote to send whoever they wish. So, yeah, I was going before, even though I wasn't clerk. So, yeah, why don't we do it that way where we go? We can do it together, like You nominate both of us at the same time.
Sounds good. I nominate Ann Beekman and Jamie Contois to be Putney's representatives to the interim unified school board.
Transition board.
Sorry, transition board. Same term.
It's okay.
Alphabet soup.
Yeah,
That's where we're gonna be for a little while.
Can I second?
You can second if you
I
want.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, good. That was a good point, Tim. Thank you for being parliamentarian. So I guess we take a look at this. We don't have the link yet from UCTV.
We do, I sent it to our WSCSU. I sent something to everybody, I'm pretty sure. So I can put it in there.
Okay. And how about,
I didn't know how to do the intro sentence. I thought there was a better sentence than that, so if somebody has a good intro sentence, I would like that.
Maybe just start with the second sentence. We invite you to join us.
Okay.
your PCS families?
At your PCS meetings, we invite you to join us at our regularly scheduled meetings.
Well, the Putney Central School Board invites us. And,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The
Yeah.
Putney Central School invites you.
PCS School Board wants to invite you.
Wants to invite you to join us at our regular scheduled meetings on the second and fourth Thursday of each month. We have moved the meeting time till 6:30 p.m. to allow for more folks to join us. I said after work, is that PC language, is that like appropriate language?
Did you say join us?
To join us? We have moved the meeting for more folks to join us. Okay. We have also begun regularly videotaping school board meetings and posting them to PCTV. They're being shown on Channel 10 and can be found at, and then insert the link. You can watch all school board meetings to keep up with school news, committee reports, updates on where the school merger process is. Please check out our updates.
How about please look for updates, because
Oh,
That way
please
we-
look for.
we can send this out right away
Mhm.
and make decisions
Yeah, yeah.
about the website and not stay here all night creating. We can do that together
Please
next
look for
time.
updates, the pen.
If you come in, people come in with ideas.
Please look for updates on the Putney Central School website. Or I should say Putney Central School Board website.
Well, we don't have, I don't know what we can put on
It's
this.
called the board page.
Yeah, the
On the school website, and put the link in there.
Okay, on the board page of the PCS website. Is that right? Please look for updates on the board page of the PCS website. We want to improve communication during this time, create a safe, I didn't know safe space was right, but I wanted to name that for my voice. Create a safe space for all ideas and voices, and to have a space for collaborating on how we work together to care for the health and vitality of our school. I wanted to say our children, our staff and teachers. I was trying to look for some exciting sentence.
Our school community.
So say the health and vitality of our school community.
Yeah.
So I don't have to name every individual part of our school community.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the central point of the.
And then we could approve this language now, and then to Herb's point, the next meeting, I could produce language that would be the temporary nature, and then what's impacting the two pathways could be on there. Does that seem reasonable?
That's up to you guys. I mean, I think the process would be you would bring a draft, and then here you would say, just like you're doing now.
Yeah.
You have an opportunity to wordsmith it, and then
Okay.
if you feel great about it, you can just,
Okay, by then things,
Vote on it.
I mean, it's the 11th, well, the 11th, not the 12th.
The first thing you're going to have to understand is that sometimes things move really, really slowly.
So I'm a Quaker, and it took 15 years for us to update our spiritual guide. So I sat in on many of those meetings, so I will tell you, I am patient.
Good. And sometimes we have no control over whether we're patient or not. If you put it in a Google Doc, then you can open that Google Doc and share it with us at the meeting, and we can work on it together.
Okay, but I can't do it outside of meeting. That's what you were saying.
Right, you can write the Google Doc at home all you want.
First draft,
Yeah.
and then
And
open
then-
it in meeting.
Yeah, and then
So
share.
I would just
with
ask
us
everyone to bring their
permission.
computers next time.
Yeah, you give permissions, and then when we leave the meeting, you revoke those permissions, and if we have to work on it some more, you can give them back to us.
Okay, and is the language, so do you want me to read to you what I understood and then I'll send it to her? Or do
I
we
thought you just
assume that it was understood and it's all set and I should just send it to her based on what we
Yeah, didn't we just do that?
We did it, I just didn't know
Everything
if I had to read it again.
about- No, that's fine.
Okay,
Um,
and then can we approve also the post to the web page?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that post is fine.
okay.
If we want to add more information, but since we did agree that we would not issue communications except together.
Which is why I was trying to figure out what that, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's part of how you do it, and that's how we've worked on things before. Somebody starts a Google document, and then when we get here, they share it with other people.
okay.
and So,
The only other question is, can we also put it up on our Facebook page, PCS Facebook page, the link to the board invite and the BCTV thing, just so more people see it?
that is up to her, because her controls that page.
Yeah, I mean,
Just like a
it's just
simple sentence?
information, yeah, sure, yeah,
Okay,
no problem.
thanks. I think that was all. Do I have to make a motion?
No, we're just
Okay.
communicating.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's not an official act to communicate.
Okay.
The last thing on our agenda no, I did get there. Okay, so the last thing on our agenda besides that we collectively screwed up and didn't sign the second pages of these, so everybody got to come back on that one. Is a very brief executive session. No, yeah, Dan,
Could
sure.
I ask, I don't know whether it's considered a public document or not, but I'd be interested in a chance to read Alice's resignation letter so I could understand her perceptions as she left and her take on issues. It seems to me that should be public information, but I don't know the technicalities of this, so I don't know whether.
I don't know if that is a public document.
Who did she send it to?
Why? So
Once Lyle sent it to us, does it become a public document? As a group?
Check.
yeah, I would really rather check.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I genuinely don't know the answer to that question, but if it is a public document, be happy to share it with you. But I need to find out.
Okay. How do I find out?
What's your record? You'd ask Alice.
Yeah, I'm sure she'd send it to you. I mean, I can't speak for her, but just ask Alice.
I don't want to put her on the spot, no. I think it needs to come through the
Call Lyle.
Call Lyle, okay.
Carlisle.
Yeah, sure, you could do that and just ask her if it's a public document.
Okay.
And I'm also happy to reach out to Lyle if you don't have her contact information and CC you. Or wait, you don't need email. I'm happy to ask her and then communicate with you if you would like.
Fine.
Okay. We get everybody?
Gosh, I just can't tell signatures.
I know the board one. Second one there.
I didn't do the second page on anything.
Because I'm generally at the top, but that big sweeping A is pretty recognizable. The rest of it's scribble.
So it's just 3 copies, second page?
Yes, as opposed to when it was like 5 copies, sign each one of them 5 times. Flip
Except
through trying to find the
this
signature.
one has, so should I sign first? You sign the
Oh, I'm
vice
sorry,
chair.
yeah, I didn't notice, sorry.
It's
Why don't we-
okay.
Just a big
I
thank you to Doug and
Hold
everybody.
on,
Yeah,
why don't we
thank you,
both,
Doug.
sorry.
Thank
So
you,
much.
Doug, and the board for putting the
Well, you put in vice chair.
meeting so people could see and maybe more people will come.
Thanks.
Well,
I enjoyed
that
watching
was the
Thanks for
idea.
researching so much.
And on your earlier email, thanks for the compliment, but as you
So
said,
this
it's
vice
not.
chair, this is next week, just so
I just have my hair up.
I missed it.
Oh, SVP,
Yeah,
right,
what's up?
PC. Okay, that's second page,
We
got
need to
it.
vote to enter, and
Well, yeah,
we're still waiting, is Doug still recording?
yeah, we have to move to enter, but when we come out, we will just adjourn the meeting, we will not make any decisions, so as soon as we vote to enter executive session,
I will respect that.
yeah, and you
I
can
don't
either
think-
go home or wait for Jamie or whatever it is you want to do.
I haven't heard an announcement that you're actually going to executive session. Is that happening now?
We are going to,
Give a reason.
yeah, and I put the reason away, because it is the same reason as last time.
While we're waiting, I just wanted to say that Herb, we went on a sugaring field trip with pre-K, and it was awesome. And I have never drank that much maple syrup out of a Dixie cup in my life. And the
Very good.
1-year-old was there, my wife was there, the 5-year-old was like asking for seconds. It was like one of the best field
It's a little
trips.
snug space-wise,
Ever.
but I went up with the third grade, we took them up today, and I think kindergarten went up this morning, so Eric's been, I put a picture on the Facebook page, but Eric's been very gracious about having us up, and it's been nice. His daughter's in the third grade, and she got a little chance to shine there with her pals, so it was fun. Yeah.
I know Christina just sent me this. Which,
Oh, was that what the motion is?
yes, it's pursuant to VSA 313-4. Okay. I move that we enter executive session in accordance with VSA 16 VSA, section 313-4, a disciplinary action or dismissal action against a public officer or employee. But again, we won't be taking any action. So I have a second.
Second.
Okay, we'll enter executive session at
Did you say all
8:07.
in favor?
I guess so, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, it's been a long week.